All right. Welcome, everyone, to our first, let me say, our first Zoom slash webinar today. So we are excited to start kind of a new series. I'll be later asking in a survey point at the end of this for future potential surveys, meetings or presentations that we could do. So for those of you who just joined, I'm Don Clark, President of Personal Financial Group, Managing Principal. The other couple individuals that are part of the presentation is Thomas Elms, who is with our group, Personal Financial Group. He helps me on the technology side and working diligently after his a little over about a year in the industry. So excited for all the work Thomas is doing and the great help he's doing for all of our clients. And then the third person on here is Mike Bell. Mike is, he's a hybrid regional management specialist with American Century. American Century, I've had a long-term relationship with American Century through the years. They are a very fine company. They give me direct access to fund managers, to research analysts. They analyze my portfolios on an annual basis to give me their unbiased opinion. So we've had a really good, strong relationship through the years. And when they made this offer to come in and help us with cybersecurity and the identity theft awareness, I jumped all over the opportunity. So I'll have Mike, I'll turn it over to Mike here in just a moment. Mike, his territory includes kind of the Kansas, Missouri, Oklahoma area. He's a local graduate of Rockhurst University. He's been with American Century since 2013. Let me click on here. Thomas, if you would like to go ahead and flip to the next screen so I can show this. This is something new, and I would ask everyone, if you have kind of if you have a cell phone that you're not using, or you want to do this, if you want to have kind of an opportunity to ask questions and you don't want to do it via, clicking unmute and showing your camera or anything of that sort. If you look right here where it says slido.com, if you go to your phone and just type in www.slido.com, or you take a picture, put your picture on the portion. What do you call that, Thomas? What's that thing?
QR code.
The QR code. So you can take kind of a picture of the QR code and it will take you directly to this site. Or when you go to slido.com, it says enter a code or a number. If you enter 888236, it's at that point you can go in there and ask questions. Then once the questions come through later, if it makes sense to wait towards the end of the presentation, we will go about answering questions there. Or if it makes sense to add it as you're asking questions throughout the presentation, I'll try to interject as much as possible. So with that, like I said, if you want to jump in and do anything there, as far as questions, go to the slido.com and we can go from there. So with that, what I'd like to do is take a moment again, thank Michael, for joining us today. Mike, I'm going to basically turn this over to you and allow you to lead us here in just a second. I just want to say at the end of this presentation, I'm going to talk about a couple scenarios. And the reason it's very important to me, to worry and look at cybersecurity is we've had a number of clients within our own network who have had problems. They've had identity stolen. They've been frauded. They've had money stolen from them. And I want to do anything and everything we can to help prevent that from happening to anyone else. So with that, I will share some stories later on down, but Michael, are you ready? All right.
Perfect.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir. I'm going to mute right now. And,
Don, I'm going to stop my share. And then if you can just allow Mike to share,
okay,
then we can go ahead and get started.
All right, there we go. All right, I'm going to mute
my screen up. Can you guys see that okay?
Yep.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Don. Good afternoon, everyone. As Don mentioned, I'm Mike Bell with American Century Investments, and Don and team has been kind enough to invite me on here today and hoping to just get you guys a quick update and have you on your way here. But I'm just discussing an ever-growing and important topic today, just in the world in general, and that's identity theft. And this is something that's growing over time. It's become more and more of an issue as the years have gone on, but this is something that affects you regardless of sex, regardless of race, religion, political affiliation, professional background, geography, anything. So we kind of compare it very similar to termites, is an idea. They creep into your home, you hardly know they're there. By the time typically you find out, the damage is so catastrophic and it could take years and countless dollars to fix. So that's what we're hoping to avoid, and that's what we're hoping to educate folks on today. So just quickly, agenda that we'll cover today: what's the risk, who is at risk, how the thieves get our information, how we can protect ourselves, and not only ourselves, but those we care about, and then what steps you guys want to take when you become a victim. Now, unfortunately, I say when, I don't really say if anymore, just because this is something that's so broad-based, but we will dive in now. Whoops. Go back one slide here. So you'll notice in this slide here, guys, the threat in general. If you look up here in the top right, 650,000+ cases of identity theft took place in 2019, and there were millions of cases of identity fraud. And you're probably asking yourself, well, what's the difference? And just the general definition, identity theft is when your information has been obtained or viewed by someone that's not supposed to be viewing or obtaining that info. And then identity fraud is when it's actually being utilized to gain access to money, credit, or accounts. Anymore, they're used pretty interchangeably. But you'll notice here on the slide, credit card fraud tends to still lead with over 271,000 cases, followed by loan and lease fraud. Phone and utilities fraud is a growing one, bank fraud, and then the two that we don't always commonly think of, employment fraud and government benefits fraud. And these are really growing now. And this is something that I'm sure has probably even affected a few of us on the telephone here, or on this Zoom, I should say. My wife was actually affected by this last year. So throughout the pandemic, we've seen a rising number in this. The state of California has had huge outflows on employment fraud benefits, and so has the state of Kansas. So again, this is something that's really affecting everyone anymore, and these criminals are becoming more cunning on the way that they're gaining access. Another common thing now is data breaches. Now, a data breach is when a store or business's private information has been, again, viewed or accessed by someone who's not authorized to do so. A common one, or one that most people probably remember on this, is the Target data breach. Again, that's a few years old, but that's one that affected a lot of people. Almost everyone's most likely shopped there, possibly has an account there. But we're seeing more and more of a rise on data breaches become just more of a technological society. And then we're also seeing a rise in something called credential stuffing. And that's where things as simple as email logins or simple news website logins, things like that, are now being stolen and taken in order to gain access to other accounts. But on the slide here, you can see this has really become a huge growing concern since about 2013. And the threat peaked in 2017 at over 1,600 cases. And the average person may look at this and say, well, look, we're on the decline. We did better in 2018, a slight uptick in 2019. But what's most alarming here is if you look over to the right on this slide, there were still over 636 million records exposed just during that year. A lot of that was due to the Marriott breach. But again, this is something that's becoming a huge issue. So just a couple other interesting stats that we like to throw out at the beginning. Over 33% of US adults have experienced identity theft, which is more than twice the global average. Also, 1 in 5 victims have experienced it more than once, and consumers lost more than $1.9 billion alone in 2019. So what we're hoping to walk through today, is again, starting with how they get our information, these thieves. So pretty simply put, a lot of people are still just getting it the old-fashioned way. They're stealing it. They're digging through our trash. They're taking things directly out of your mailbox. Maybe they're stealing from your purse or wallet. A big one that we saw several years ago that's starting to diminish somewhat is skimming debit or credit cards. This is something that's still smart to keep an eye out on, though. So With skimming on debit or credit cards, what's happening is the thieves have built a small device and it's going to fit like a glove over an ATM, over a pay at the pump at a gas station. We always recommend that when you're going to use these things, you simply just feel around on that machine, make sure that nothing's going to pull off or break off. So it's always smart just to be aware of your surroundings and really kind of give the once over to these machines that we're using anymore. Phone scams are on the rise. I don't know if it's just me, but I feel like I'm getting a call every single week. And then you look at online and social media scams as well. So we're going to cover all of these today. Again, just we'll talk about how to protect ourselves at home, away from home, on the phone, and so forth. So first and foremost, how do we protect ourselves at home? First of all, we're all using the internet anymore. Everyone's online. Everyone has home Wi-Fi. A simple thing just to start the process here is make sure under home Wi-Fi that you have a password, that it's protected. Okay, that way other people can't gain access. It's only you, your family, or your close friends maybe that are there with you that are gaining access. But these documents here at the top are the things we want to be able to keep in a safe place. What we recommend is a fire retardant file cabinet is obviously a good idea. If you have a home safe, that's even better, or maybe even a safety deposit box at a bank. But social security cards, right? We never want to have those on us. We want to keep those in a safe place. Birth certificates, car titles, tax returns, all of these have tons of information that's personal to us on there. The thieves would love to get their hands on, so we need to keep these things locked up ideally. Also, a simple thing you'll see here at the bottom, one thing that'll provide you a ton of peace of mind is a shredder. It's very simple. Office Depot, you can pick one up for $30, $35. I picked one up almost immediately years ago when I bought a house for the first time. We get so much info anymore, whether it's monthly bills, bank statements, pay stubs mostly are going online now, but if you're still getting things like that, a shredder is really a must, guys. And one thing I'll share with you later in the deck here is how to opt out of those pre-approved credit card offers and opt out of a lot of that mail. We can simply protect ourselves really by going a little more digital a lot of times. So that's a huge recommendation. If you like your paper and everything, just buy a shredder. So how do we protect ourselves away from home? Well, first and foremost, we want to be aware of our location. Think about this, an ATM that's located in a bank lobby is pretty safe, right? It's probably a lot safer than pay at the pump at the gas station. So again, we need to just kind of be aware of our surroundings. Never share our account PIN numbers. That's a pretty simple one, guys. You've been told that forever. And then also kind of be cautious, right? On when you're entering your PIN, you always want to use your other hand to cover this information. A lot of times, there's possibly fear on cameras being hidden around. This is how these skimmers like to get a lot of our information. So if we could be more conscious about covering and not utilizing our PIN. We don't want to accept any sort of help from strangers. A lot of times someone will lurk around that ATM machine. They'll say, hey, I just had the same problem. Maybe try entering your number again. We never want to do that. Always keep your card in sight too. So if you're at the store, maybe they're having problems with the terminal at the front there, don't be afraid to follow that store assistant to the back of the store and make sure that they're going to run that on another machine of theirs. It's never a bad idea to keep this stuff in front of you. And then, of course, report any suspicious activity to institutions or any authorities you may need to, whether that's the FTC, police department, or obviously your local financial team here. All right, so here's a really, really good one. So I bet if I asked everyone right now what you have in your purse and wallet, I bet 90% of you probably couldn't answer that question. We tend to acquire so much stuff anymore, and we tend to hold on to everything. So one thing that I recommend, I did this a few years ago, and it may not be for everyone, but I know it works really well for me and I love it, is I bought a pretty simple phone case here, right? And you can pick this up on Amazon, all right? The brand is Smartish, okay? But it's a pretty simple phone case here, and you can see it's got a little pocket on the back. And when I pop that out, I'm able to carry a credit card, my work ID, and my driver's license all with me. So it provides room for 3 cards. I believe you can buy other ones that have more room, but here's a simple way to limit the information that we're carrying around. As you can see here on the bottom of the slide, and something that's good to keep in mind is the less you carry today, the less they can carry away. Most times you can get away with a driver's license, which is of course a must, a debit or a credit card, a work ID. A lot of these buildings I know are requiring, an ID for admittance anymore. But things like a gym membership, I would say you probably don't need with you, or at least on your person at all times. You could probably leave that in the console of your car and be okay. Health insurance cards, again, this is where technology is our friend. We can utilize apps anymore and things. So if you have a smartphone and you're comfortable utilizing apps, that's an easy way to keep a lot of that information there and keep it safe and secure so that you're not carrying it and somebody can't walk away with a purse or a wallet to gain access. So how do we protect ourselves on the phone? As I mentioned earlier, this one is really growing. I used to have a great voicemail that I recently lost that I wanted to share with you guys, but this is becoming to the point of really just annoying anymore. What's nice about technology is a lot of times now our phones can sync out and tell us when a call may be spam anymore, so we don't always have to answer. But typically, these folks are going to reach out. They're going to say it's part of a charity deal. Maybe they're looking for donations. Maybe you supposedly won a prize. But the biggest thing to remember here is they prey on people who are nice. The easiest thing to do here, guys, is hang up the phone. All right. Hanging up the phone, contact the institution directly that they say they're from. I received this call recently from an Agent Johnson at the FBI telling me that my social security number was going to be shut off if I didn't call them back immediately. The easiest thing to do, again, hang up the phone, contact this institution that this person says they're from directly, and make sure everything is okay. Again, like we talked about with the cell phones too, we have cell phones now. There is so much information that we carry around on this little thing in our pocket. Let's make sure that we're using either the face scan, an ID scan. We want to keep our phones locked at all times. We carry so much personal information on there. It's best to keep things secure and locked. So if you do have a smartphone, if you're able to install track and wipe software, that's something we highly recommend. This is huge if your phone goes missing, if it's stolen. This can give the authorities the ability, obviously, to track it down or possibly track it down yourself. But more importantly, what it does is it allows you to wipe the entire contents of the phone in case it were stolen. So next, let's talk about passwords here. And this one's always quite alarming. I'll put it that way. Here are the 10 most common passwords in the year 2019. So what's interesting to me is first time I ever saw this chart, you look at number 3 and you think, well, that one's kind of unique, right? Who's going to guess that? But for anyone who's in front of their computer right now, if you look up in the top left corner of your keyboard, you'll notice that's actually just sequential lettering up there across your keyboard. Again, password continues to make the list year after year, which is just wild. But what we want to do, guys, is we need to have safer and more secure passwords across our sites. In an ideal world, the professionals recommend that we have different passwords for different sites. And I understand, and they can be varying degrees of toughness, I guess, if that makes sense. So for a news site or a blog site, it's probably okay to have a little bit of a simpler password. But as you go to your bank accounts, your investment accounts, any sort of financial institution, you need to crank up the security there. Make sure we're using special characters such as exclamation points. We're using capital letters, lowercase letters. But even better, if you can use possibly an obscure phrase, whether it's a line from a book or maybe a line from a song, you want something that's personal to you, personal enough that you'll remember, but not so personal that someone can guess. So we need to avoid pets' names. Let's avoid children's names. Don't put the name of the service, I guess. If it's a Google Fiber internet, don't put the name Google Fiber in the password. So again, we just need to be a little bit more diligent on our passwords. This is where technology plays a huge role again, is anymore we have keychains, we have great things like this that can store all of your passwords securely, whether it's on a computer, whether it's on a cell phone, which is great. Utilize those to your best advantage. If you don't have one, I'd suggest going out and just Googling keychain or digital keychain for passwords. It's something that can be extremely helpful. If you do insist on writing them down, which is fine too, again, consider keeping those in that locked safety deposit box or excuse me, your fire retardant safe or file cabinet at home. All right, so phishing emails is another huge thing that we see today that causes big issues. And this is something especially on the financial side. So here's a perfect example right here. And this looks like it's coming from a very reputable website. It looks like it's coming from eBay, which is the auction website. What took me a minute to gather here is the letters are off standing there, you'll notice. On eBay's website, they're actually straight across. So here's kind of your first tell that this may be from a bad place. The other thing so to consider is when you receive emails like these that are typically phishing emails, they're going to be mining for bank account information, social security numbers, things like that, but they're going to be very generic in manner. They're not going to have your name. They're probably going to say, "Dear sir," or "Dear ma'am." You want to keep an eye out for misspellings. You can see they misspelled the word advice here, but also they're going to create a sense of urgency. It's similar to the story that I mentioned earlier about me receiving that scam phone call recently. There's always going to be a sense of urgency. If this is not completed by such and such date, we'll be forced to suspend your account, turn off your social security number like I was told, whatever it may be. So you got to be on the lookout for things like these that seem very aggressive. And then last but not least, we always recommend that folks know where a link is going to take you before you click on it. So a lot of these are going to have embedded links that are going to lead you to either a bad website, maybe it loads a virus to your computer. So you want to be very cognizant of these. A simple way to do that is hover your mouse over the link. By hovering your mouse, you will get a small pop-up that'll tell you what website you're headed to. So you always want to do this. But again, it's similar to the phone situation. If you think something's screwy, hang up the phone. If you think something's fishy online, just delete the email. That's the best way to go about it. All right, so next we'll talk about social media. Social media is becoming bigger and bigger. It seems like every year there's new social media sites. And while they can be great to stay in contact with friends and family and whoever else, these are great places for scammers to go to collect additional information. So think back to the password conversation, right? A lot of times when you forget your password on a site, you get a challenge question. And typically it's pretty simple, right? It's what was your first pet's name, date of birth, school mascot. So you can see here, we've got a lot of these listed. So our recommendation is just think before you post. If you want to give a big birthday shout out to yourself, to a family member, maybe it's a milestone birthday, that's okay. Just maybe consider leaving the year off, right? The year of birth. You know, if you're giving a big shout out to your hometown sports team, again, just kind of remember somebody may be out there collecting that information. Did you just go to a high school reunion? You know, again, that challenge question could be, what was your mascot? Children, pet information, we all have used this in the past for passwords. These are easy things for people to pick off here, so we need to be cognizant. And then, of course, it's always just best practice maybe to limit the information that we put out about our children or grandchildren in general online anymore. And then finally, things as simple as vacation photos. It's always smart to remember, if you can, maybe hold on to those things and wait and post those until you're back home. It's never a good idea to let people know, hey, I'm out of the country for a week or 2 weeks at a time, and I'm constantly posting things online. So again, it's fairly common sense, but we always just need to think how other people could possibly use this information before we post it online. So how do we protect children? This is a growing threat. You'll notice here at the top of the slide, pretty alarming number. 2/3 of children at the time of identity theft are between the ages of 0 and 7. And a lot of this is due to the fact that by the time you come home these days, you have a social security number already. So another thing too is the children now spend so much time online. It's more time than any generation prior to them. They may be part of a gaming community. They may have things online for school, social media. We need to kind of talk to our children and make them aware of the information that, again, they're sharing online and how that information is collected, how it's stored, what's safe to share, what's not safe to share. But again, you'll notice this becoming an alarming number that IDs are being stolen from children, and then they're being used to claim government benefits, loans, housing. It could be a lot of things. So by the time we figure most of this out, the child may be coming of age. They're, closer to 16, 18. Their credit's been absolutely destroyed. It's going to take forever to overcome this. So these are things we need to do here. One thing that we recommend that's very simple too is just freezing the child's credit. You could do this for any minor's credit, or you could do it for your own credit. But a simple gift, possibly, this upcoming year to a child, grandchild, would just be putting their credit on hold or on freeze. And typically this is less than $10 to do, and it stays like that, and that way no one can access it. All right, so lastly too, let's talk about parents and elderly. So pretty alarming slides here too. As you'll notice, 1 in 20 elder Americans admit they've been victimized financially in the recent past. 90% of the elder abuse involved a trusted friend, advisor, or relative, and only 1 in 44 instances are reported. But of course, as we become older, it makes sense that we become a target. Typically, we've accumulated more assets. We're becoming a little less aware of new technology and the way it works. But it could be things like cognitive decline that we need to keep our eye on too, social isolation, grief. But let's kind of do a better job reaching out, speaking to our friends, speaking to our parents, our neighbors, and making sure that everything's taken care of there. So again, things to keep an eye out on are warning signs, unpaid bills or collection notices, opening or closing of accounts suddenly, and then relationships or maybe new relationships that are influencing financial decisions. These are all things to keep an eye out for when it becomes our elderly. All right, so finally, what do we do when we become a victim? You know, again, as I mentioned earlier, it's not so much of an if anymore, it's a when. But the first thing you want to do is, of course, contact your financial institutions. I would get a hold of your advisor team here. I would contact your banks, your credit cards. You want to, of course, go back and change all your passwords there that we mentioned earlier. You want to close out the fraudulent accounts, of course. You'll also want to place a fraud alert on your credit reports. Typically that lasts 90 days, and that can help you just keep an eye on things. You'll want to create an identity theft report with the FTC and your local precinct as well. And then order copies of your credit reports. That way you can eyeball everything, make sure you haven't missed anything. And then of course, capture everything in writing. You're going to want all these things for your records, so just make sure you have it captured. So again, guys, just to kind of recap what we've quickly discussed today, it all starts with good habits. So we don't want to carry any sensitive information around in our personal wallets. Let's make sure we go through those and eliminate things that we can. Buy a shredder. Shredding those documents gives you peace of mind, and it's a very cheap investment in order to keep yourself protected. We need to use stronger passwords across our sites. We need to change them often, and we need them to differ between sites too. And then finally, don't give out any personal information to strangers, whether it be phone or email. Again, we can set up fraud alerts if you guys need them. You can contact the 3 credit bureaus. These last for 90 days. It's a free service. And then as I mentioned earlier, consider possibly freezing your credit if you guys don't need access to it. Consider this for juniors, whether it's your children or grandchildren. But as I mentioned earlier, guys, this is not so much of an if as it is a when. We can't always protect ourselves, but again, what we can do is stay aware, we can limit access, and we can monitor our accounts to be better protected. So lastly here is just our resources page. This is really helpful. And what I'll do is I will share this with your guys' advisor team. So that way they can share this with you in turn, which you'll notice this is great, just reference here for how to collect your annual credit reports, how to get in contact with those credit bureaus if you need to, information on the Federal Trade Commission that I mentioned, and then probably most importantly is how to opt out of those pre-approved credit card offers. But again, guys, thank you so much. I really appreciate all your guys' time here today, and I will turn it back over to Don.
Mike, do me a favor real quick. Can you go right back to that screen share?
Sure.
Go to that last page.
Yes, sir.
For participants here, if you can see this last page, maybe grab your cell phone camera or a camera. Sorry about that. I should have got to you. Take a picture of that. Just take a quick picture. I'm going to do the same thing. There's a lot of helpful resources and numbers here that I think everybody can basically benefit from. So thank you for that. Maybe one more minute there, Mike. And
I'll share that with you as well, Don, and that way you can feel free to share that with clients in turn.
Perfect. Yeah, we'll definitely do that. So while we're finishing there, again, for anybody that's going to want to ask questions of either Mike or myself, remember, go to Slido. That's SLIDO.com. And in the spot where it says enter number, enter 888236. Okay, Mike, you're good on your screen save, if you screen share, if you like. I want to hit on a couple things to kind of summarize some of the points that Mike, that he has made. One of the early ones he talked about employment fraud. Last year, I got several notes from the state of Kansas asking me to confirm the dates that several of my staff members and other past people had left my company so they could start receiving unemployment benefits. Take it, they're all still with me. So it was somehow they had gotten in and found out our company. How did they do it? I called the state. The state, he is exactly right. The state definitely said it's been a big issue across the state. Fortunately, we were diligent enough and paid attention. We were able to stop those. A couple other things. I recommend to a lot of people, especially those who travel, who drive, when it comes to using credit cards when you're getting fuel, I always recommend, if you're a Cabela's person or Bass Pro, get one of those cards that has a very low credit line on it. Maybe $1,000 credit line. Doesn't have to be a high one. Use that for all fuel situations. Never use a debit card, in my opinion, for any of those types of transactions. I've seen that hurt people a number of different times. So I always recommend just use a small credit card line. Use it, whether you leave it in your car, I'm not necessarily saying that, but keep it somewhere handy. Use that for that sole purpose of that particular thing. And then third that I want to talk about is, one of the things he mentioned was kind of elder abuse. And one of the things about having an advisory firm like us working for you, if we suspect any type of elder abuse, and I can tell you, I've already had to report one this year, and we're just now into February. If I feel or have any inkling that there is elder abuse going on, it could be a son or daughter. Most of mine have been either a son or daughter that have been long lost, and then all of a sudden mom or dad is maybe not at the same mental capacity that they were, and then all of a sudden you start seeing money coming out of their accounts or something. We have a legal obligation that we have to report to the state. It's an anonymous. We go to the state, we report what we know, just the factual stuff of what we know. We also have to report this to LPL. LPL does have an elder abuse hotline that we use. And at that point, what they do, they'll put a freeze on all accounts. And I can tell you, it has come in handy on multiple occasions over the last 12 to 18 months for me. So that's another one of the benefits of having us, around and being a part of your, managing of your assets. So it's a good thing. A couple of other points I'm going to make. We've had here in the Overland Park area a very highly intelligent individual who just got scammed. And he got scammed, and in a matter of minutes was able to get a $40,000 wire out of their local bank account and wired through a number of different institutions to where within the matter of 10 minutes, it was untraceable. I mean, the bank could not stop it, could not do anything. And it was all simply because he had received a phone call that he thought sounded legitimate, and he listened to him and went to a website. So he just got right in, got into a website, and in a matter of moments, his phone was accessed. They took control of it, went in, entered his bank information. They put in their information. Boom, $40,000 was gone. So again, you don't think this can happen. This happened to, again, a very highly intelligent individual here in this area. I've had another one where the FBI got involved, and to the point, and this lady is still troubled. Another highly intelligent individual, advanced degrees and everything, and you would never think it could happen. She got on the phone and her husband was not around. And somehow, as the FBI has come since said, that for 4 hours, they had her on the phone and in a sense hypnotized her to the point that she gave every one of her siblings their social security numbers, date of births, addresses, and everything. Literally wiped out. And when the husband came back in, she didn't even really realize what was going on until he was able to kind of get her in. And then it's been a very difficult time for them. They're very untrusting of just about everything that's out there. Fortunately, none of their money came out of any of our accounts. We were able to close things down in a hurry, and they've been protected. But it's funny just how quick things like this can happen. So I have a question here. And Mike, you can answer this, or I would be happy to answer it as well. But do you recommend identity theft protection services? Mike, do you want to take a stab at that first?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yes. I think everyone's situation is different, right? So, but yes, we do. We think it's a great idea. And typically it's a very small cost anymore. But as I mentioned earlier, as we get older, we are a little less aware maybe of what's floating around, the technology that's out there and everything. Typically, this is a very small service, or excuse me, a very small cost of service, I guess, for the protection that it provides you. So, I would check if you're still employed, check with your employer, or check with any other clubs you may be a part of. Look at Costco's, look at things like that that may offer this benefit for a small fee. But again, very small fee for the protection it provides you.
Excuse me, just water went down the wrong pipe there. I also want to say I agree wholeheartedly. I personally have multiple protection plans. Just being in the financial industry, the last thing I can have is somebody stealing my social security number, getting into my accounts. All of a sudden, my credit goes, something happens. So I personally have two different services that I use. Anytime anybody accesses my credit for anything, a credit card is just doing their annual checkup. Our parent firm, LPL, checks on me multiple times a year just to make sure things are where they're supposed to be, and keeping an eye on me. So every time anything like that, I get alerts immediately. I have the app. I get an alert that says that. I mean, I've recently was taking advantage of a 0% financing on a truck, and within the minute that I gave them and they started putting my credit, I had multiple alerts from these services saying your credit has been, you've been applied for, or this or that and everything else. So I personally really do agree and think we need to have those. So good, great question, and thank you. I don't see too many other questions coming in. Again, I'll do this. I'd like probably the next 2 or 3 minutes, we will try to close this out. But Thomas, do you want to add anything here after from a younger perspective?
Yeah, I actually did. I wanted to hit on two things in particular. You actually brought up a good one. A lot of the major bank providers now, I've got this on all of mine, Don, I'm sure you do too, is they'll actually have a per transaction notification on your smartphone. I highly recommend on any sort of debit or credit cards that you guys have, feel free and reach out to us. We could possibly help, or maybe reaching out to a local bank member that you work with, getting those notifications set up so that anytime a transaction occurs on whether it's one of your debit or credit cards, that you're getting a notification of that. I've noticed it even on online Amazon purchases that I make. The second that I hit, proceed to check out and confirm my payment, that notification is popping up. And the second thing that I really wanted to hit on is just kind of reconfirming, whenever we're kind of recommending and having all of these pieces in place for verbal confirmations, whenever we're bringing money in or taking money out of your guys' accounts, this is the exact reason as to why that's happening. Is we really want to make sure that whenever things are coming through or going out, that we have your verbal confirmation. And that was kind of what I wanted to bring up, just to make sure that everybody kind of understands the reasons to the methods to the madness on that. I know that sometimes it could seem inconvenient, but at the end of the day, we really just want to make sure that we have you guys protected, your assets protected, and that everything flows smoothly.
Thank you, Thomas. And I did get a note as far as to in today's time with the cryptocurrencies, to be aware of those trying to purchase Bitcoins, or they're trying to get you to go down the path of a crypto and linking your bank account, and it's something there. We did have another client that did have their entire bank account depleted over that. And it's, again, everybody talks about all the monies they're making within crypto, and it's not necessarily always the case. So first, let me say thank you, Michael. I appreciate everything. Again, I have always appreciated the partnership with American Century. You guys have been great for our firm, for our clients, and fortunately, the funds are doing great, and they have been. So I appreciate that, and so does everyone who's on this line, because I know everybody that's on here has a piece of the American Century different funds. So I want to say thank you for that. And then Secondly, Linda is going to be working, her and Thomas are going to be working on a quick survey. It should be a 3 or 4 question survey, nothing too lengthy. And as far as how good or bad we did, you don't have to say anything about that. But what we would like to know is, do you find these types of presentations helpful? Would you like to see additional presentations like this? Again, we're very time respectful. I think you can get in 30 to 45 minutes and have a great presentation, and then make it available offline so that if you weren't able to do it, you can go to our website and then listen to it. So if there are other categories that you feel that might be good, and I did have one from a gentleman who said, Don, could you do a type of presentation like this that involved how do you deal with when someone passes, closing down their Facebook accounts, or how do you close down their social media accounts? How do you address their email and things like that? So while there's a lot of resources out there, we are working on putting together a presentation like that we could then come out to you and talk about what are the steps that you need to take in order to do some of those different tasks. So with that, there's no additional questions. I want to say thank you. Stay safe, stay warm. Go start a fire if you have a fireplace, and I look forward to seeing you throughout the year. So with that, everyone, I'm going to end the program here.